Thank you. Hi, gang.
So pleased to have you here.
Lovely to be here.
Well, I guess we can start with the fact that you really pioneered a lot of social media marketing before it was really even a thing. And we are sort of now at this new inflection point where there's another emerging technology that's disrupting communities. What parallels do you see between what was happening then and what's happening now?
Thank you. Gosh, lots. I mean, for starters, I feel like I carry guilt because of all of that, which maybe sounds absurd. It's not like I'm really responsible. But in our tiny way, I think it's just, and maybe a couple of you might be nearly as old as me, but because we've been a part of it from inception and have lived all the way through it to now. So launching TV shows for terrestrial broadcasters here like Channel 4, Skins and The Phone Jacker and In-Betweeners, and it was really fun. And social media then was about, it was quite hard to recall, but really messy connection. Like, there wasn't anything monetized, optimized. You never used the word algorithm. That barely existed. Like, it genuinely was an opportunity for us to build a fan club. We modeled it. The reason we were pioneering was we ripped off the old music industry fan club model that frankly had been around since the 50s and used it within broadcasting. And something called MySpace existed, so we thought, oh, wicked, we can get a whole bunch of people on here talking about something before it's even out. And guess what? They can talk to one another. And those people can act in an individual way and paper their MySpace kind of areas like you would put posters up on a bedroom wall. This feels so long ago describing it like that now. And it's hard to recall before that just sheer weight of what it became. So I guess the reason I'm giving that bit of backstory is it was really exciting, and exciting in a way that right now is. So there are very obvious parallels in that respect. But we know what happened, and we know what it's become, and it's pretty hard to handle, and it's a strange one, right? Because I suspect everyone in this room uses it. I do. I still find myself scrolling on Insta and sticking up something on stories when I've done a talk like this, as I probably will later. Or, LinkedIn's like the new Facebook. I mean, it's insane. So it's almost like a necessary evil, dare I say. And I work with brands. I consult with brands all the time. And it's not like you can just go, hey, and we're not going to have any part of this on social. You may as well just say we're closing up. So it's a very strange relationship that currently exists. But the excitement that pervaded all of those times is definitely here now with AI. There are unbelievably big differences, I think, because social really came at a time where, I started working in this whole thing in 1999, right? This again showing my age. Holler, my first agency, I started in 2001, but in 99 I was working on Charlotte Street up the road at a digital agency called Zinc, and we were building websites. But honestly, was anyone really on them? It was like beans.com and these things that were just, they were almost like these strange new world artifacts, but super clunky, and you'd look at it on your dial-up. But it basically took almost a decade, I think, for us to really get to grips with that era, really until smartphones and smartphone kind of economics and buying stuff on an iPhone, really in the early and bit of kind of mid-level social media before it all kicked off. And the reason I'm saying that is it's a 10-year lag. There's no 10-year lag now. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is a relentless pace, like minute by minute. And I'm sure many of you subscribe to a whole bunch of feeds in AI, and you're doing a brilliant job curating this kind of conversation for good so that we can all kind of learn and dig in. But it is borderline impossible to keep up.
So fast.
And there come risks with that. Now, we walked into one unbelievable amount of risk with social media. It's led to, all sorts of issues from teen suicide, let's be honest, right the way through to anxiety and the mental health stuff. And this presentation that was just kind of given, I could have written, it was brilliant. And that Gen Z kind of, Jesus Christ, that was a knowing kind of diatribe of where we exist, right? So I guess I'm saying everything with this feeling of, I bloody hope we learn. I hope we can marry that excitement with what it can be and what it should be versus what it became.
Yeah, I mean, the pace of change is so fast now. From all of your time working in youth culture, do you feel that AI is already changing the way that young people are interacting with brands?
Yeah, definitely. Listen, I hope I'm not today just a walking set of contradictions. I sort of feel like I am, where I continually wrestle with this subject, and there's parent in me to a 16-year-old boy, personal excitement with working with brands and furthering kind of marketing and comms and understanding what I do. But I almost feel there's this continual yin and yang. So we'll see where we get. Listen, on a hopeful way, I think what's really interesting, let's say for the way young people are dealing with it right now, I look at my son, I think there's an awful lot of agency that they're getting back and ownership. You know, as per that wicked piece of video, they have been dealt a pretty dodgy hand by all of us. I feel terrible. You know, they're like, really? This is what you've left us? You know, whether it be politically, I've gone from Boris Johnson, through to 2 terms of Trump. And a climate emergency that I knew about when I was 7 years old in my primary school that you appear to have completely ignored, and you're basically now saying is left to us. And now you're saying no one's got any money, jobs don't exist, there's a cost of living crisis, I can't buy a house, and AI's taking over the world.
Tough times. Really
so
tough times.
So it's really hard to be that age, I think. But what I particularly like when you're starting to see the way they interface with it, typically more advanced immediately at SONA, is agency, a return to agency, a complete empowerment, a real fluency. And it kind of started in a slightly worrying way a few years ago when they were very demanding with Alexa. and I'd be terribly polite. But I think that's turning into an expected understanding of you are here to help me. It's like another limb. And I like that because that return to agency I feel like they require in a world that tried its best to remove it. So I think that feeling of ownership and authorship and being an originator again fills me with hope.
Ooh, that's a really interesting thing you said there about agency. Do you think that CMOs are getting this shift wrong? Because it seems as though the conversation is just always about the way that AI is going to empower brands. They're not really talking about how it's empowering people.
I think that's exactly right. And I think that's one of the most hopeful and exciting parts. And you would assume CMOs would tune into that. I mean, if you look at things like Cannes Lion, right? When you go there in the last few years, everyone's on the beaches going, yeah, we're using AI, fantastic. They sort of, even this summer when you're there, everyone's like, yeah, we're all over AI and it's great for efficiencies. Everything's about reducing down and distilling, and we don't need that anymore. Fantastic. And this is super efficient. We're going to save some money here. It's all about savings and efficiencies. Whereas the moment it's kind of flipping that and it's autonomy and responsibility and agency, then it becomes more human and you get to do all that is good to be a human again. And if you push that and empower that and give that a greater platform, then invariably the stuff that we make and the things that we say will be better, rather than, as per the brilliant presentation and video before me, more trash, more slop. What we don't need is more clutter and noise. Jesus. Absolutely, we all do everything we can these days to sift through and, dial that down and remove that bit of noise and try and find it. And that might be the best brand in the world putting out the greatest piece of television advertising tomorrow, and it will basically be gone in 48 hours because it can't compete in the noise of our streams, which is a great shame because it's great stuff. We might come on to that on how to sort of better give things that opportunity to stand. But the more CMOs realize that this can be about agency and human agency and what it is to be human, and whether that be with giving that agency back to young people who desperately need it the most, then that feels very hopeful and positive.
Definitely. And I think on that idea of the sort of experience, the humanness, people are having brand experiences sort of everywhere. They're on their phones, in their homes, in retail environments, shopping centers, et cetera, raves even now, commodification of raves. What do you think are the cornerstones of good AI integration into brand experiences, either digital or in real life? Have you seen any good ones yet?
Definitely anything that doesn't just smooth it out to within an inch of its life and smooth out the edges and because I think what we're seeing, and again I feel like I'm referencing loads to what was just said, but it's just such a good kind of 5 minutes but we desperately need everything that is tactile and touch and physical and friction and all those bits that have just got lost in our screens. You know, I don't know if it's coincidental or a reaction to, but in the last few years, you've seen this unbelievably significant shift where you could argue right now experiential agencies, for example, in this industry are really important, for example. I think they've reclaimed a space that it used to be, hey, and now we'll find a little bit of budget, we're going to do a stunt, and it's for an alcohol brand, and that's it. But now it's like you kind of need to have some kind of physical point, physical artifact to anchor the thing in the first place, to have something to go off. If it starts on screen and ends on screen, it's really hard, like I say. So, yeah, I work with like a sports retailer like JD. Used to be JD Sports, and they actually do more perhaps than you'd imagine for young people. They've got some wonderful stuff where 90% of people in management in JD stores actually started there on the shop floor as like 16-year-olds. They're really good at kind of growing young people and bringing them through businesses. But also they see their retail environments, the work that we're trying to do together, increasingly as like places of belonging where young people can see how other young people might look and feel a bit like them and see an identity and recognize it. And the recent opening of the Trafford Centre in Manchester that some of you might have even been to but would know about, rather than just a big space, it is the biggest, I think, JD in Europe or something like that, but you've got JB Customs, a corner where you can go and basically design your own sneakers and trainers and hack them. And you know, it's often forgotten that I think the stat is for young people, the assumption is everything would just be bought online, but 60% of those, I think, under 30, still need to go in store and have the physical product. So they will all search for it and compare and contrast and stick it on their Snapchat message to their mates or whatever that might be, but they still want to coalesce around it physically. So again, I think that example is how can then AI improve that experience even more? Stop shortcutting or distilling it down, like taking out human interface and moments of coming together and moments of connection and seeing someone who looks like you and people you might recognize from a screen who come into store, and that's the good stuff. Anything that has a physical connective tissue around it. Now, AI can still underpin that. It can make those moments even better. It can take you to them quicker. It can allow you to find out more, greater in depth around it, but stop trying to kind of shortcut it and allow the human bit to carry through.
Definitely, and kind of AI as this facilitator. And so when you're consulting brands on kind of these omni-channel of, being able to take, those digital experiences and have that, through the line work that takes them into retail spaces, how can we think about what that balance needs to be between AI-driven efficiency and still being in the spaces and having that local nuance that makes people actually care?
Your point there on local nuance, I think, is so big. And again, I know that was mentioned. Like local nuance fills everything at the moment. It feels like, so AI is giving us this opportunity where, well, there's kind of no excuses in one hand. So yeah, I started an agency when I was 23. And I'm 40-something now, I'm going to tell you, 40-something. But I've sort of always joked, this is true, but said, God, I've never really been able to use Excel, never really been able to use a spreadsheet, but I've sold my business. But it's true, I haven't. But I don't think those jokey quips can exist anymore. Every single person can do everything a little bit. So what remains? And that kind of what remains becomes, I think, like, really important both from a brand perspective, from a commercial perspective, in terms of what people do and what people make and what people see. Like, what else is there of that almost creative human condition? What do we expect from, from what people walk into in terms of a commercial experience or a brand experience? The physicality becomes everything. So I think, again, like we mentioned before, but you can't underestimate how the interrelationship works at the moment between physical and digital. Cassette sales are up 20%, I think it is. Vinyl sales are through the roof, like absolutely massive. You're getting magazines brought back. So when I keep talking about this need to anchor these ecosystems where people have something to, the feeling of like belonging and something to hold on to. So you got that, and then going back to your question, how does it act on a local level? Like local becomes so important. It's a bit like when we can all do a little bit. Well, I used to lie as an agency owner on the pitch to the brand, and they'll be like, can you do global? And I had like one person in the States, one person in Dubai with a dog, and I'll be like, yeah, global, we've got that licked. No question. Now, everyone can do global now pretty much because of the tech and the AI that exists. Local's the real sweet spot, though. If you get, it's all about local accents, local nuances, local dialects, and it's happening. I work a lot in culture. It's happening in this country, for example, in music at the moment. You know, in indie bands around the UK, there's a brilliant resurgence. They're not necessarily transcending and coming down to London, which I kind of like. It's very tribal. It's kind of like the away day football followings. You got like the Lathams in Wigan or Jamie Webster in Liverpool. They're very proudly from their area, speaking in their local accents, very much from that space, wearing it like football shirts. People like Sam Fender's a really big or obvious example in the Northeast. Like, it's a really important thing that people have that sense of pride. And again, that's kind of travel. You know, pride is that human condition, where you're from. You know, a lot of the work we do with JD, funnily enough, you know, some of the towns in northern towns and cities in the UK, and some of these young people are from fairly impoverished backgrounds that you speak to, and we're bringing on to various CSR programs, but, you know, their sense of pride is insane and just utterly compelling and infectious, and that comes through. So you can't just do a one-size-fits-all, and definitely shouldn't. It will be ruthlessly filtered out. I think we've never needed that local accent, local nuance in our work or in our comms more. And that, hopefully, with AI allowing us to be more global in a way that my business never could be, perhaps in the way that I've just joked, well, maybe it's about really getting under the skin of these local places that becomes really important.
Definitely. I mean, there's this consumer demand for in real life experiences that we're seeing. You know, it's surging, especially as AI is dominating digital spaces. What do you think is driving this sort of hunger for tangible, physical moments?
I was saying the other day that I think almost like because I couldn't agree more. The KPI now is almost like goosebumps. I've got goosebumps now because I'm cold. It's a slightly different goosebump. Sorry, slightly shivering. But you know, you mentioned things like raves. Like, so if you go back a few years, I hate ever talking about this. Sorry. So if you go back to COVID, lockdown, all of that nonsense. But my gosh, that beautiful craving for this again. And this is still really important. It's only a few years ago or 5 years ago, whatever it is now. But like it's still so important. And then do you remember how much we yearned for it and craved it? And people almost forgot what one another kind of looked like. And people, you know, my friend wrote a thing actually that I've sort of always remembered since, where he almost was like, I'm never saying no again to that opportunity for that sporting event or that music moment. And I've tried to live more that kind of piece, where if it comes out, it's like, sod it. We have to do it. Now, I think, so we are definitely in that post-pandemic era that is crucial anyway. If you combine that with, you know, the greatest, remember, the biggest decline right now with the switching off of social apps, they've sort of felt like there's been one too many. It's not been with older people, it's been with the young. It's Gen Z, right? So it's a self-policing thing that's going on where people are thinking, I don't want to sit chained to this anymore. I want to go out and speak and see people or go to that rave or that event or whatever it might be. So again, yeah, my old lot, Defected Records, for example, you know, they're doing run clubs. It's a house music label. And people are running around the streets of London in their fluoro, you know, defected. But like TikTok aren't stupid. They have pop-up shops, physical places to come to. Snapchat's Vogue exhibition on Regent Street, you might remember. Gymshark is an online, you know, sports apparel retailer. You know, I thought it was a great example a few years ago where you go in there and if you're a kid, you can't afford gym membership, but you can go and rather an Apple Genius bar. It's a lift bar, and you learn how to bench, and it's the physical embodiment of the brand. So I think everyone is looking for ways they can act like that. How can we flip our brand inside out and give people something to touch and feel and be a part of something? So again, I think it's this almost confluence of things going on. There's so much noise and so much clutter that you need a place, maybe a place to go, a place of connection. You need something to stand out, so it can't just be something that's on social media, in our social feeds, something you can get an emotional, visceral reaction to. And people want those memories, you know. I talk a lot at the moment about, I just made the words up, but I think it's a thing, the aftermath economy. Like, I was working with Spotify recently, and I was sort of saying that, you could argue they are partially responsible for. I've called it the sea of sameness. The Guardian called it the tyranny of the algorithm, where everything got a bit flatlined in culture. The music sounds the same, films sound the same, and it's a shame. And it's because we were all so time poor, apparently. We're all like, oh, For You pages, yeah, wicked. Amazon recommends because she said you saw it, you want that too. Oh, yeah, wicked, but I've got no time, so yeah, I'll do that. And everything got really beige and vanilla, and Spotify radio and For You pages and Spotify Wrapped feels a bit like one of them. But I was talking with Spotify about everyone's always chasing the peak. I think a lot of brands are going to be now on the bit which is always about the memories. So look at last summer and Oasis and the brilliant kind of effect, I think, and people being on Gallagher Hill, trying to watch a tiny bit of Heaton Park in Manchester and listening to it and singing together. And the socials from that gathering on that hill arguably beat what was going on the concert. And it's the aftermath of an event. I used to work at Glitterbox, and you'd finish a Glitterbox event on Ibiza and the floor's covered in confetti and people are wide-eyed, not for those reasons, because they're loving what had gone on. But then it's about the playlist afterwards, that long drive home. It's like, that stuff is memories, and that stuff is emotion and feeling. And I think we are desperate for that. So building around that bit, I think we're going to see more and more of.
I think on that note, I mean, you've analyzed so many digital trends over the years. Are we at a bit of a risk of sort of over-rotating to the impact of AI and actually missing what people actually want or care about from brands?
Yeah. We sort of can't help but see this kind of speeding train of AI hitting us as it is, and I think people like everyone here are absolutely right to be unpacking it and desperate that we are doing what's right. And you're right, the trends, but there's kind of, I guess, macro and micro trends, right? And you'll know this better than me. This is literally what you do in a far more clever way. But this is bigger than the internet, so this one's a whopper. This is pretty seismic. This is electricity. But again, that's interesting. Even the use of language. I remember years ago, and I was in a not dissimilar scenario talking about mobile, and I was like, and I'd found this data, this kind of thing you'd find loads of, but it was like the historical use of the word railroad in the lexicon and in language, or prior to basically saying that you were traveling across the countryside on train. In other words, you always used to use the sentence, I'm going to use electricity to turn on the light. Or, we used to say at university, we are going to go on the internet now. Like it was a session that we were about to take part of, and I would troops down to our little lounge in the Midlands and turn on our massive desktop tower Mac and spend a session on the internet. Because you would. But AI is a bit like that. We're still using it in that way, but we're not going to. I mean, look at what Johnny Ive, I don't know, people here will probably know more than me. I assume what Johnny Ive's making with OpenAI is the equivalent of a thing that's sitting here and it's listening. Because at the moment, we are very restricted by keyboards and typing and thinking of prompts. But I'm suspecting that bit's going to disappear quite quickly. And voice, I don't know how many of you do. I'm like Alan Partridge, walking around quite a lot, speaking into my friendly GPT. It's as much note-taking as anything and to typewrite, which makes me look like an absolute idiot. But I'm assuming that's going to turn to listening. And then I think cognitively, and I'd love to know what people like richer than that would say about this. I think it'd be far more aware. But what that does to that, I think, is interesting, because at the moment we're very constrained, constricted, and bound by typing. And so that feels very freeing and hopefully liberating the right kind of thinking. Because that's surely the best bit. Going back hundreds of years, it was technology to make us more human is a lovely thing, i.e. not being constrained and bound by what we're having to do, which is so menial, in order to free up headspace to do better. I think we got lost in social media. It wasn't to do better. I'd love to think, it's actually going to free our imaginations more. That could be really hopeful.
That's a really interesting potential of AI as well. And I think If you were a CMO today, then thinking of that potential, and you were planning your 2025 to 2030 strat, what is one thing about AI's impact on brand building that you think you would be thinking about, and what do you think you'd be avoiding to avoid the sort of pitfalls of all the sort of how we sleptwalked into a few different issues with social media?
Such good questions. Like, well, for starters, I mean, I think saying 2030 is borderline impossible. People in here will be far brighter than me and perhaps have a better grasp of that. But I speak to brands a lot and say to look further than 12 months ahead is insane. And that's not, I don't think I'm avoiding the question other than to plan beyond that is really tricky. You can set legacy, though, with intent. So if the brand's intent, and let's say it's working with young people over time and doing something with purpose, then of course that's an intent. But in a kind of classic comms way, you just don't know. The chances are the tech, comms, social landscape's going to look very, very different in about 18 months, let alone sort of 5 years. To the intimation of that question, I would love to think it's. I mean, I hated what Sam Altman kind of came out with the other day, and there was that weird conversation which was effectively not ruling out kind of AI's use in pornography, and you're like, why is the headlines not about? Do you know what? 50% of what we're doing is going to absolutely be about these cures in these medicines, or like, why can't it be unbelievably galvanizing and uniting? I would desperately hope, but I'm not sure how much hope I have with the current figureheads at the top of the technologies, but you would desperately hope you go, that last 10 years looks fairly dodgy, utterly polemic, incredibly divisive, monetizing division, monetizing anxiety. Like, I'd love to think we go, let's do the next bit where we've got a climate emergency that needs solving, and this might give us a chance of solving it, which will free up these wonderful young brains. We can galvanize them in this way. Look at the way we can unite these pockets and factions of issues. Like, that would be wicked. Now, I don't believe half the people at the very top of the tree are going to do that, but I do believe people far lower, i.e. a bunch of CMOs that any of us might speak to on any given day at a bunch of good brands, perhaps could. And brands maybe do need to really step into that mantle. They've done it for years. Look at Nike's advertising with Colin Kaepernick or whatever, like Patagonia. Like, there's a million examples. It doesn't even need that great a save the world grandiose purpose, but you can in your own lane. And I think people need that assistance. And if money exists, and if young people especially are saying they'll buy into a brand who is, frankly, as well as adding value to their life, doing something in a way that is important to them, and athletes and artists and talent are more culturally symbolic to young people than ever were before, well, all the stars align, actually. It's not like something that you have an allergic reaction to. You want people to step in and help. So I'd love to think CMOs can take on that mantle of responsibility and go, yeah, we'll get involved.
I mean, I love that. I think so often the conversation is about speed and efficiency, but we're losing that sense of, well, what is the cultural impact? You know, if we're going to be creating more, what is that more actually doing in culture? And I really love that as an
Absolutely.
idea.
Speed is just going to lead to more noise and clutter or slop, as was said earlier. Or we're just filling up these pipes that already exist, that no one needs to fill them up anymore. They are full enough. And we've got half the internet's already dead, like that whole dead internet thing. So how can we do more to free up imagination? And I'm sounding terribly worthy, I don't mean to, but, you know, doing things, even on its simplest way, how is it adding value, augmented the lives of people, young people? How is it helping? We were mentioning loneliness earlier. It's a huge thing. It's a massive thing. You know, it's massive. You know, I've just done some work with a football club, and it's about loneliness. It's epidemic proportions in this city, in London town. You know, things like football and sports are a wonderful thing for that, actually, and it solves that. Well, my goodness, I'm fairly sure some brilliant brands in and around AI can help there. Social media, ironically, was about connection at its best. And there were some good bits, because it helped certainly young people with social anxieties kind of be less anonymous and talk again for the first time. But the social part just got completely lost, and it's now this sort of strange broadcasting relentlessness, kind of, supercharged algorithm. So I would love to think that there is a response to all of that that is within our grasp.
Do you think there are any trends or shifts then in the way that people are using AI? Like you mentioned, becoming more agentic, you mentioned earlier on, that marketers are kind of blind to right now?
Yeah, the agentic thing's really interesting, isn't it? I'd love to know what this lot do as well. Do you use... Because the stuff there's two bits. So yeah, come on, can we have a show of hands? Are we allowed to do that?
If anyone wants to share.
So show of hands, who's using it like for replacing stuff like, I don't know, nutrition or diet or personal training or gym routines or chef? Like, who uses AI in ways that's...
I do.
There we are, all of us. Basically everyone. So we're all doing it. Now, I don't know how public that stuff is or how publicly you discuss it. So one thing I think is really interesting, I was speaking to my mate yesterday, and he's like, I've had this idea, and it's like a banger. But he's just been working on it for ages with his GPT interface or whatever. Now, that stuff I like. It's like, I have a feeling we're all doing stuff, not in secret deliberately, but that's like our little mate. Or we're just having a little think about things. But rather than walking around talking to myself, which I do a bit of, you've at least got this thing that can talk back to you and you can refine these ideas. And I'm not sure that stuff that maybe it exists in some WhatsApp groups and little, Telegram chats or mini groups or you and a mate saying, oh, I've had this thought. So I suspect there's a million little side hustles going on. I hate that phrase, side hustle. What's a better version? These ideas are getting oxygen. And perhaps before they weren't, for a million different reasons. Someone might not be very good at writing down ideas or articulating what's born in their brain and getting that down on paper or sticking a deck or storytelling, whatever. Now you can. Now that is really interesting. And so I definitely think that bit's forgot. That's like everyone's suddenly an entrepreneur if they want to be. There's a million business ideas, book ideas, thoughts, theatre productions. Like, wicked. That's cool, isn't it? I'm not sure that stuff's coming to the surface yet when it's all about efficiency and we'll cut that bit out that used to take a squad of humans and we'll replace them with a bit, it'd be done in 5 seconds by a bot. So I think that's the bit that is nice. And I'd love to know what's going on in all those little dark social environments, like those little WhatsApp environments, or just the one-to-ones. The one-to-one is my hope. I feel awful one, and so if you will excuse me just for one more minute on this. So where I was so worried about AI being loads of slop and just filling the feeds, and oh Christ, and what is it? Is it more AI agents than humans there's going to be this year? Was that the stat? Bloody hell, really? Is that good? Doesn't feel good. But then I spoke to a CMO friend of mine, a fashion guy, the other day, and he used to work for Alexander McQueen, and he works for a huge retailer now, and I hadn't caught up with him for a while, but this guy is all about craft. We used to do this. He used to work for like Dunhill. He used to do these beautiful campaigns, all about the photography, and he was all over it. He goes, "Guys, great, isn't it?" I'm like, "Really?" Like, I really didn't expect his angle, and he said, "Yeah, it's." He said. And basically, the bit that I'm adopting from quite a lot that he said is the one-to-one nature of it, the co-pilot nature of it, the fact that we get to work with something that is quite literally kind of programmed to be better in understanding you every time you interface with it. So at its best, it should know you better than you know yourself. It should be beyond you version of a perception of you that is actually, your version of what you think you should be, but it's kind of how you feel they're seeing me. And is it even you? Like this AI, if we get this right, should be able to hone and work with you and know you intimately. And the more you think about that compared to, let's say, the last decade, which is all about averaging the community and aggregating the masses, then maybe that's returned to us as artists. And that's definitely been lost. And this idea of, remember that iconic picture of Picasso in his studio or Francis Bacon, it's covered in oil paint everywhere. And quite like that. Is it the return of the auteur and the mad artist and the Lee McQueen fashion designer? And because you are spending such time with one other, honing your harebrained, madcap, weirdo stuff, maybe that will end up somewhere really creatively exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, slightly too much. Great idea.
I was about to say, you can there are really good prompts to make AI crueler to you so that it gives you more objective opinions. It's actually quite good. There's a good one. I'll give you.
Definitely need more of that.
So I guess for the brand leaders in the room today, so what is one concrete change that they could make to their approach this quarter based on how AI is reshaping brand activation?
Try and use it in a way that is not going to displace something a human's doing, but improve, elevate, or advance something that is human in what you're doing and what you're making and what that output is, if that makes sense. So it's not just a shortcut to replace, to save another few quid on the bottom line to, make the C-suite happy. And I know that it's easier said than done, but trying to push what it is to be human, because we desperately want that. That is pushing on an open door. Taste is everything right now. Taste is that absolute differentiator, bar none. History, knowing history. Sounds mental. But, look at what AI can't do right now. I'm not saying it won't be able to, but I watched that Paul Thomas Anderson movie, the Leo DiCaprio one battle after another. Have you seen it? AI can't do that. And the reason it can't do that yet, is the nuanced appreciation of history that you need to deliver culture right now, like mixing up 60s, 70s, early kind of revolutionary, Viva la Revolution kind of language, and putting it into that early use of sort of spectacle terrorism and baking it back into a kind of Leo DiCaprio riff on his old world roles, bring it up to date with 3 decades of kind of music. You can't do that with a machine yet, but you do it with history. You need to know your history, your cultural nuance, your intimate understanding and cultural layers and music and film and creative appreciation. So all of that bit is vital. So protect what it is to be human at all costs, whoever you might be, brand leader, and push it harder rather than just seeking those efficiencies.
Well, that leads perfectly to my last question before we take some Q&A. So at the end of the day, great brands are ones that connect with people on that human level. As AI becomes more prevalent in the creative process, how do you see the role of human creativity evolving alongside AI and what AI will allow us to do?
Yeah, I guess hopefully it's that thing of us not, we became slavishly devoted to algorithms in the last decade. I'd love to think we can become genuine co-pilots with it. It has to feel hand in hand, hand in glove, however you describe it. It has to feel like collaboration, but that has our human sensibilities on the top. That humans are still the chef at the pass. That sprinkle and that garnish and that finesse and that excellence, and we have to be originators and have taste absolutely at the heart and human curation. And I was in a talk with someone else, and they were sort of saying it's really funny, and she was American. She said years ago arts majors were kind of sneered at, and instead it was about being a fantastic lawyer or but now, like, doing art history is potentially an amazing differentiator for young people, for example. And again, that's because what is it about us lot as humans that is special? Preserve it, look for it, create more of it in our teams, push it harder in our young people that we train and we work with, and then use AI to our advantage. And that's not just cutting corners, that is freeing our creativity and freeing our imagination and unifying us and uniting us. Jesus Christ, we need a bit of that at the moment, and perhaps doing some good too.
Impact. Thank you so much, James. This has been such a great chat. But I think we have a few minutes to open up the floor to some questions. If anyone has any questions for James.
What do you think about live social engagement? Do you think it's something to pursue, or do you think it's something that's kind of getting...
What's the context?
So say you've got a live feed going on about a product and people are able to comment, engage. Do you think it's something that's dying, or do you think it's something that's engaging us more?
I think it's still really engaging. I think it's really engaging to to surprisingly young ages too, because of the way they've spent the last minimum 5 years in the likes of Twitch streams, gaming environments. so it's an expected part, if you like, of their growing up. And the reason I say that is therefore means it's probably future-proof for the next 5-10 years. Also, it's discourse, it's conversation, it's back and forth. You know, my slight critique of social that I might have given is because it's stopped being social broadly. You know, TikTok is the apex predator of all social media. And is it social at all, really? It's an amazing search tool. It's algorithmic rocket fuel. It will show me, it's beautifully engineered to keep me comatose, like, you know, worryingly gripped to it. It's incredible at that. I stick it on a drip in me and I'm done. But what you're describing there is a far more a conversation. And it's taken me back to lockdown again, because we were doing these virtual events at Defected, and what we had there's a wicked DJ called Luke Solomon. He manages Honey DJ, and he's very famous, comes from a lot of Detroit, amazing guy, right? And he's very, though, anti the virtual festival stuff that we did. We finally got him to do a performance on Twitch, and it was from the Defected Basement up the road, just down the corner, actually, in Curtin Road. And the reason I'm saying this is because it was blowing up. It was live on Twitch. I think they put it on their homepage. So it was live in North America, and it was like 5 o'clock in the afternoon here. And he was seeing tens of thousands of people responding as he was basically playing a set. And prior to that, he'd just recorded sets in a virtual way, and that's why he'd found it quite a sterile experience. And he came off, and he was buzzing. He said, that is exactly what the real thing's like. And he orientated his music and his set precisely to the ebb and flow of the comments and the emoticons and the emojis and the love he was getting. And he basically, for him, it was like playing live for the first time probably in about 18 months at that moment because of lockdown. So the reason I say that is it's real. So a live social experience, as long as it's social in some way, is real. So I think that absolutely still has a place at the moment. Far greater a place, if you like, than just relentless pushing down the pipes of a broadcast like way.
Thank you. That's great.
Do we have any other questions for James? Oh, there we go.
Hiya. Really great talk. Thanks so much. It's so funny to hear that, you know, there was such a exciting kind of like blossoming at the beginning with your career, and you mentioning Skins, and we're seeing a bit of a resurgence of Skins appreciation online, even across the pond. We're having like some American love for Effie, and this obviously ties back. Yeah, this ties back into all the kind of nostalgia stuff that you were talking about, and I think that kind of global, local harmony between the two is quite interesting. And kind of what is it about these cultural moments that feel very local, feels kind of very London and very rooted in that time, that is able to kind of transcend cultural barriers and be kind of picked up in places like America?
God, I love that question. I think more than anything, it's breaking the homogeny. Like, I love the thought of that very British Skins thing going across the pond full stop. I know there was an American version, but the fact that there's the appreciation of the original, as it were, I think that's particularly interesting. You can't underestimate, again, it was mentioned earlier, I thought on that brilliant talk before I started, was nostalgia is astonishing levels at the moment. I mean, it's just more and greater every year. And I agree, absolutely unsurprisingly, because people want to feel again. Now, they want to feel again because they remember a time when it felt different. And I guess that's the important thing. There's bad sides. No, I'm not going to say there's bad sides, wherever you sit politically, but there are sides to that have political consequences. You know, make America great again is quite literally about, do you remember how it used to feel? We can make it feel like that again. Like, that was everything. The reaction to Jaguar was entirely around people felt that they owned this car. I hadn't sat in it. My rich mate's parents had one when I was 12, 13 years old. That was the last time I'd sat in a Jaguar. But they were vaguely therefore a part of my growing up, kind of a James Bond-like car, a thing that... And a whole bunch of swathes of people thought they had ownership of this thing, that they had never bought one for years. They couldn't give a toss. They didn't know that one barely a Jaguar sold in the preceding 24 months. And everyone went mad then that, how dare you take something that was mine? So nostalgia's everything. The latest John Lewis ad is basically, frankly, Dad's my age, going, oh, Christ. Now, the best thing about the new John Lewis ad, I think, is that TikTok and Reels and all of that is now full of parents dancing like they did in the 90s. Now, I love that.
So good.
And it's quite genuine. And you've got, like, mums in their pyjamas and slippers putting on a pretty banging rave dance from, like... and I'm sure the kids are not thinking it. But all of that is feeling, isn't it? It is absolute... just remembering what it was like. So even Skins. Skins was in the social media era, but it was 100% the beginning of it. And it was completely bloody different. And like I mentioned right at the start of this conversation, it was like fan clubs and we all had our personal spaces. And, oh my God, we could talk to other people online at the first time. And, you know, you'd kind of evolve from MSN Messenger to this. And I'm going onto your page. Oh my God, you've made your page out of that. And it's like walking into your bedroom and you got 5 tracks that are your tracks, and I wonder what my 5 tracks are going to be. And it was so exciting that we could connect on that level. And of course, the music from the time. Now, arguably, MySpace was one of the best platforms for music, by the way, that's forgotten that there ever was. Barely a social platform. It was an incredible place for music, and that was all about the music from the era and the noughties. And now music as well, you have a 20-year cycle. It's kind of just this weird, strange, known thing. That's why in the UK, you might have seen all the ads recently. It's like those EE ads with Block Party and the Klaxons, and it was all stuff from 20 years ago, right? And we just do this. But it's very nostalgic. So this is a very long-winded way of me saying I'm not surprised because of the nostalgia. The British, the love for what was, I think that's about breaking the homogeny and having something different and feeling there's something different that you can go to and that you can see and that you can buy into and that you can tap into, be it fashions from the time or music from the time too. But I love that it exists like that. And I bought a Skins print only the other day. So this whole timing is weird. 'Cause I don't just go around talking about Skins. I haven't talked about it for bloody years. But weirdly, I bought a print the other day that now sits on my little kitchen wall of the party that they did at the time because it feels nostalgic. It's 2 decades ago, so I guess it is.
Yeah, it's interesting that the people are nostalgic for social networking now. Just like you mentioned, social media isn't particularly social anymore.
true.
But, you know, MySpace was that different era of networking where you did actually feel like you were social. So, yeah, no wonder people are nostalgic for it.
And you see it. I see my 16-year-old, all his mates. They're incredibly social in the morning. Like, they are all Snapchat messages. Mm-hmm. But it's the least... I don't know if you've either closer to that age than me, or you have kids and you see it yourselves, but it is the least manicured, curated. It is him and his mates. You just see some of the photos they send each other. It's grotesque. Deliberately so. Like, awful, no style, lighting awful, just woke up, like, mouth wide open, half yawning. They a deliberate, clear reaction to the Instagram culture, right? But it's immediately also a conduit of humour and fun and taking the mickey out of one another, of messaging and the relentlessness of their messaging back and forth and the scale of the group chats they have there. And it's incredibly social. But they just find their little part of social media that still is social because all the other bit isn't. They'll use that when they need it. But that's their bit that is. So we will always find it, I guess, as a species. Maybe not. Maybe the middle-aged crew, like, we'd lost it, and we're like, oh, it's a shame it's not social anymore.
Interesting. I think we can take one more question, if there are any more. Richard.
Hey, great talk. Just wanted to explore a little bit and understand your perspective on, I guess, the conversational aspects of brand experience and AI. Like you talked about Johnny Ive and these devices and us moving into a more kind of embodied space where all of a sudden we're going to have robots with personalities that are going to move around spaces effectively like proto-humans, right? Like, it's a pretty bold idea, but I don't think we're that far away from it, maybe 2 or 3 years. But like, what's your perspective on that? Just be interested to get your take.
I bloody love Richard's brain, by the way. We used to work together. Yeah, like, it's so hard, isn't it, when you say something like that, for us all not to get into something that just as humans makes us feel like, oh God, we're now onto a sci-fi one, right? And we will almost turn off. But you're right. I mean, we were almost there. So I don't even have the new AI browser. What was it called? Atlas? Was it Atlas? No. What's the open
Comet
AI?
is Perplexity.
But the
Atlas. Yeah.
It is Atlas, isn't it? Yeah. I've not even really played with it. I don't know if you have or people do here. But the simplicity of now sending agents to do everything for you and connect those dots is basically also what you're saying. So you're right. It's not the near future. The manifestation of what physical form those things might take is different. But the connecting of the dots, so that's kind of why we're talking about, you're no longer on that prompt. This is the thing. Like, remember, AI, artificial intelligence of sorts, has been with us for quite some time now. But we were prompting in secret. We didn't know we were. Every micro decision and micro movement we all took for the last decade on every single big tech and social platform was underpinned by algorithms that ultimately is artificial intelligence, which has took us to where we are today. So our decisions have already been informed or influenced. We've already lived through it. It's only now in our friendly GPT interface. We're like, oh, great, this is working for me. It's like, all right, well, we've done a decade or so of where it's all gone wrong. But so we've been doing it in secret. Now we think we're in full control, and oh my God, they're saying really nice things to me, and this must be a great idea I've just come up with. And I'm pretty sure that next version, my friend actually had a very similar sort of idea, but this notion of the listener, this notion that this tiny device is sitting here in every room or a part of our apparel or on us, which again, when you first say it, like, oh God, is that weird? But then it makes perfect sense. So if you and me are going to have a coffee tomorrow, for example, and we're just having an hour's chat, the idea that that's beautifully surmised to you moments afterwards and say, oh, you were mentioning, I don't know why this is coming to my head, the Gumball rally, and do you want me to start looking into that? And how did you see that working in with what you've been talking about? And I know you were talking with me with that brand. Do you want me to connect those dots? My God, that's going to feel powerful. The connecting of the dots worries me a little bit because, again, I bet you know more than me on the stats, or you probably definitely do, but people not working hard enough for the answers will worry me. The absolute reliance on the interface. I mean, didn't GPT go down a bit yesterday? Was it yesterday or the day before? And you can imagine the speed. Like, my mate's a writer, inverted commas. And he's I'm not going to mention, he's a wicked journalist. He's like edited some of the biggest stuff in the world, and he's like, his output has doubled, of course, in the last 12 months. And he's like, yeah, I'd be lost again. Like, the speed with which, and that's the thing, it's becoming the internet, isn't it? It's going to become the gatekeeper. It's going to become our start point. Every browser session really is you start with GPT. Does anyone really Google stuff now? Do you tend to use whatever, you can't believe, even 12 months ago saying that, I think we were going, come on, Google Reflex, surely. But the speed with which that's kind of shifted. So I guess those bits, I think I have equal excitement and concern, because I think that's the bit that I think we all struggle to realize quite how quick this is and quite how much this is going to change. And again, the convenience of me speaking to that holiday trip being booked, to those items being sent, to the PA version of that agent solving that travel arrangement, to your mates being notified, to your holiday being booked. If all of this stuff exists frictionless, that's where I get a bit concerned. Because it feels a big old hope to go, so then you're just going to be left with your imagination and coming up with genius new ideas to save the world. Probably not. Left to your own devices. That bit. I feel like we need friction. And I feel like the last 2 years of people have just found that anyway. And that's why we're all reading mags again and going to raves and buying vinyl and buying record players this Christmas. And that is not coincidence. So you sort of feel like, I hope we just keep doing that to counterbalance whatever that is.
Awesome. Thank you so much, James.
Thank
This
you
has been
very, very
such a
much.
Great chat.